Welcome back. The 10-minute video series for Ultimate Access looking at the CIMA operational case study in May 2018 on Manseco. This is video 9 and we're looking at relevant costing. My name's Sandy Hood and relevant costing is an area within the P1 syllabus, and I think that this slide is particularly good because it sort of shows what we do in terms of information that we're given in terms of how we classify it, whether we use current replacement cost, current resale value or opportunity cost. Very useful, and I'm sure an area that you studied when you were preparing for your P1 exam. Here within the P1 syllabus we can see that it's featured within the short-term decision making area. Explain principles of decision, use relevant cash flows and qualitative factors, apply relevant cost analysis to various types of short-term decisions. So a 30% area of the P1 syllabus means it's significant. It was tested in May 2016. It's been tested several times. Here, candidates were unable to clearly demonstrate and apply, I put that in big bold letters, and apply their understanding of relevant cost principles to a costing schedule. Yes, and that's why we're going to feature this today. Looking at the clues from the pre-scene, there's plenty. Manseco operate in an affordable luxury segment of the luxury leather market. So they've got customers who are price aware. This isn't a segment seeking the cheapest products in the market. They recognise value for money. These customers may be prepared to forego some of the attributes of a very similar product at a lower price. So here we're recognising the significance of price. These are not people who are branded in. And this could be provided by a large retailer through a special order from Manseco, that special order type of relevant costing question. Here we can see that the department stores are currently shown on the graph as being low aspirational, low price. At the upper end, of course, but certainly on that side of the cruciform. Whereas an aspirational kudos can enable department stores to sell more or enable them to have a slightly higher price, thereby pushing these particular products upwards to the right and thereby enabling them to either sell more or to raise the price. And if you want an example, in the UK they brought in George at Asda, and the George branding at Asda enabled them to sell more. I don't think they aimed to sell them at a low price, but it gave it the sense of quality. And Marks and Spencer's is my example, another major UK company, but obviously with worldwide operations, and they sell a high volume of leather bags, and some of them are part of the M&S collection. So you could see this as an order that could come in from, say, M&S, ordering a large number of bags to take advantage perhaps of some spare capacity at Manseco. And then, or we could see this coming in from an online retailer in a lower segment of the market. So they're not offering in that sort of affordable luxury area where the big golden M is so important for the Manseco sales. Here, these people are prepared to compromise by foregoing the golden M, foregoing some of the other attributes, but buying a good quality bag at a lower price. Or it could be something where we've had an order come in from an entirely different part of the world. For example, in Brazil, we may well have a Brazilian supermarket or department store chain who contact Manseco, and Manseco say, "Oh, that's fine. We can sell our bags into your stores." Thereby, they are able to place a special order. And it would fit the future development opportunities, because as you read through the pre-scene, we know that the future development objective is to introduce new sizes and new designs. And so by testing the water, as it were, by selling these products to another company who then sell them under their own brand name, we are seeing whether or not there is scope to be able to move into that market segment. And Melanie Zhang herself has said that she's keen to see the company expand into other products and markets. And so when she says markets, we could be tempted to think that she's thinking about selling in Asian countries, but that isn't what market says. It could be that we're looking at another segment within the handbag market within their current geographical area. Manseco's senior management team is aware of the need to expand internet sales. Good. The senior management has no obvious internet expertise. We have an IT manager, not an IT director, and he reports to Jonathan Young, who's the operations director. And if you look at Jonathan Young's summary, he's far more concerned about the efficiency and the effectiveness of the operations. Doesn't say anything about IT. So you begin to wonder whether Manseco's digital business managed in-house using generic software is really the best way to go. Manseco's are large enough to have bespoke software. So we could be looking at that side of things, or they could outsource. And if they were to do that, that would provide an opportunity for the examiner to examine relevant costs from the point of view of switching from an in-house to an outsourced approach. Now, Manseco could outsource distribution as well, and this will provide an opportunity, again, to test relevant costs. So you can see relevant costs, lots of opportunities here. In the statement of financial position, this was interesting. The carrying value of tangible assets fell, which might suggest, there's all sorts of reasons why they can fall, but it might suggest that we've got less productive capacity. If so, then this one-off order may well be rather constrained. We would need to know about capacity and capacity constraints in order to be able to answer a relevant costing question, because typically a relevant costing question is about a special order at a lower than normal price, and typically it's taking up spare capacity. And then in that final section, that new magazine article, it says loss of luster for designer handbags might reduce the capacity required. It might lead to other segments of the market growing rather than affordable luxury. We could see this switch in terms of customer preferences going from the affordable luxury products sold in the Manseco specific stores into more purchasing online and more purchasing of products which don't have quite such a distinctive characteristic. And if that's the case, we may well be looking for growth in the slightly cheaper leather handbag area of the market. So, going back to my previous slide when I said about the students not being able to apply their relevant costing principles, then I thought we'd look a bit more at this question. It was a 50-minute section. It had effectively two parts: the benefits and limitations of outsourcing and an explanation of some figures that were presented. We're obviously interested in the second of the two tasks within the section, an explanation of whether each of the figures shows the attached schedule are relevant to the outsourcing decision, and a bit about cost and benefits analysis. So in the May 2018, 2 years on, we could have something very similar. We're looking in the context of Manseco. We're not looking at intangible assets. And here's a practice question. Hello, please prepare a report that I can send, presumably to other people who perhaps are not particularly financially aware and maybe not particularly familiar with the kind of jargon and specific terms that we might use between ourselves. And he wants to cover the benefits and limitations of outsourcing the IT processes, an explanation as to whether each of the figures shown in the attached schedule are relevant to the outsourcing decision, and how we should carry out the cost-benefit analysis. And then you have to explain what other factors would need to be considered before making a final decision. So we've eliminated the pros and cons of outsourcing, and we know our routine, that we identify the question, we plan the answer, we check that our plan is addressing the task requirements, and then we very, very quickly write up a whole series of short paragraphs. For the whole of this section, we would allow ourselves 9 minutes, and looking at the schedule, we can see these are the various bits of information that we are presented with. 6 cost categories for the annual costs of the current IT processes. They're the in-house aspects. So it's currently costing 1.8 million, in this case, dollars. Annual costs have got these additional notes with them that certain parts of it are fixed and certain parts are variable and so on. And then the costs of outsourcing, we can see that the tender price that the outsourcer has offered and the service agreement administration costs that we would incur, and then some transition costs, redundancy and accrued holiday pay. Now all of that was about a different company, but it could just as easily describe Manseco. We are looking for outsourcing the IT at Manseco, and there we have it. Identify the question, plan the answer, and check that the plan addresses the task requirements. We need to know what we mean by relevant cost. So you probably remember this, and you can be calling out at your video as we speak. If not, these are the initial letters. You remember? Future, incremental, cash flow. And now we look at the schedule and we see whether or not these are costs which are future incremental cash flows. 80% of the salaries and benefits will not be incurred in the future. So that's a cash flow saved. The other 20% is obviously fixed, and that will be there whether or not we outsource or whether we keep it in-house. The furniture and equipment depreciation. This decision will lead to a 50,000 cash inflow because we're going to be able to resale the equipment that we've got. The computer and consumables, 70% of that cost will be saved because of the decision to outsource. So we're beginning to be able to explain to our, in this case, Anders Bukati, that there are certain cost savings that we're going to achieve through outsourcing. The software itself is a cost that would be avoided if outsourced, so we would save all of that. The office lease costs, well, costs saved would be relevant, and so would the penalty fee. Down here, then we've got the office lease will be terminated, so we don't need to pay it, but we would have to pay 3 months lease costs as a penalty for closing the lease early. Utilities and communications, the cost saved would be relevant. The tender price now, as we move over to the costs of outsourcing. The outsourcer's tender price is based on the service level negotiated and will be reviewed at the end of each year. So that's clearly incurred only if we outsource. The service agreement administration is an estimate of the cost of the time that will be spent by existing managers on administering this service agreement. So it will be incurred whether or not we outsource. So that means it's not relevant. The redundancy costs incurred if we outsource, making them relevant. And the accrued holiday pay has to be paid whether or not we outsource. So that one wouldn't be relevant. So you must understand the question. You don't need to necessarily remember lots of numbers, but you do need to be able to explain things to these non-financial directors in a way that they can understand. So go through every figure and state whether or not it's relevant. This means looking at those that are not relevant, not just those that are relevant. And in terms of exam questions where you can earn marks, this isn't too hard, is it? It's fairly straightforward as long as you have this methodical approach. And you're basically looking, if it's got an F, if it's got an I, and if it's got a C, then we know it's relevant. 10 costs, 10 paragraphs, 10 marks. So here we have it. As always, I don't tend to recommend the scratch pad. We go straight into the word processing document, writing our headings down, and then putting in the paragraphs that fit them. So we're looking at the salaries and benefits, depreciation. So all of these, we've just taken the headings straight from the information we were given. An easy to plan task. We've seen others that are more difficult, but this one, very straightforward. We then need to just add bits to do with the cost-benefit analysis and the other factors to consider. We don't need to give the relevant cost. We are not asked to do any calculations. When you look at the question, it was to do with understanding which costs would be relevant, not doing a sum. Important, because I think that because of our natural inclination of wanting to do sums, we could be spending time doing something that doesn't really earn us any marks. Other factors we might want to consider would be the reliability of the company that we were outsourcing to. Is it financially secure? We might look at the accounts to make sure that it's going to be in business for years to come. Are they willing to be flexible as far as our needs are concerned? Because presumably our needs are going to grow as the business gets bigger. And what effect would making our own staff redundant have on the morale of the staff that we've got that remain? It may be that we could look with the outsourcing company to see if any of our staff that we would be making redundant may well be able to be found positions within the outsourcing company. I hope to see you for the final introductory recording. This was our penultimate one for May 2018. I hope you found this useful, and I will look forward to that day. Thank you.